What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're gonna be reading The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis, kind of picking off where we left off, and it is going to be a wowza dozer today. We're starting chapter 2, Likings and Loves for the Subhuman. This chapter seems to be one of the largest chapters, spanning over about 26 pages. I would like to get through all of it. I am going to be reading in a little bit more faster pace than normal, and I won't be doing as much reflecting. I'll be reflecting whenever I feel it's necessary, but for the most part, let's just jump into it, guys. Most of my generation were reproved as children for saying that they loved strawberries. And some people take a pride in the fact that English has two verbs, love and like, while French has to get on with aimer for both. But French has a good many other languages on its side. Indeed, it very often has actual English usage on its side too. Nearly all speakers, however pedantic or however pious, talk every day about loving a food, a game, or a pursuit. And in fact, there is a continuity between our elementary likings for things and our loves for people. Since the highest does not stand without the lowest, we had better begin at the bottom with mere likings, and since to like anything means to take some sort of pleasure in it, we must begin with pleasure. Now, it is a very old discovery that pleasures can be divided into two classes. Those which would not be pleasures at all unless they are preceded by desire, and those which are pleasures in their own right and need no such preparation. An example of the first would be a drink of water. This is a pleasure if you're thirsty, and a great one if you're very thirsty. But probably no one in the world, except in obedience to thirst or to a doctor's orders, ever poured himself a glass of water and drank it just for the fun of it. An example of the other class would be the unsought and unexpected pleasures of smell. The breath from a bean field or a row of sweet peas meeting you on your morning walk. You were in want of nothing, completely contented before it. The pleasure, which may be very great, is unsolicited, superadded gift. I am taking very simple instances for clarity's sake, and of course there are many complications. If you are given coffee or beer where you expected and would have been satisfied with water, then of course you get a pleasure of the first kind, a lying of thirst. And one of the second, a nice taste at the same time. Again, an addition may turn what was once a pleasure of the second kind into one of the first. For the temperate man, an occasional glass of wine is a treat, like the smell of a bean field. But to an alcoholic, whose palate and digestion have long since been destroyed, no liquor gives any pleasure except that relief from an unbearable craving. So far as he can still discern tastes at all, he rather dislikes it, but is better than misery of remaining sober. Yet, through all the permutations and combinations, the distinction between the two classes remains tolerably clear. We may call them need pleasures and pleasures of appreciation. The resemblance between those need pleasures and the need loves in my first chapter will occur to everyone. But there, you remember, I confessed that I had to resist a tendency to disparage the need loves, or even to say they were not loves at all. Here, for most people, there may be an opposite inclination. It would be very easy to spread ourselves in laudation of the need pleasures and to frown upon those who are appreciatives. The ones so natural a word to conjure with, so necessary, so shielded from excess by their very naturalness, and the other unnecessary in opening the door to every kind of luxury and vice. If we were short of this matter on this theme, we could turn on the tab by opening the works of Stoics, and it would run till we had a bathful. But throughout this inquiry, we must be careful never to adopt prematurely a moral or evaluating attitude. The human mind is generally far more eager to praise and dispraise than to describe and define. It wants to make every distinction a distinction of value. Hence, those fatal critics who can never point out the differing quality of two poets without putting them in an order of preference as they were candidates for a prize. We must do nothing of the sort about the pleasures. The reality is too complicated. We are already warned of this by the fact that the need pleasure is the state in which appreciative pleasures end up when they go bad. By addiction. For us, at any rate, the importance of the two sorts of pleasures lies in the extent to which they foreshadow characteristics in our loves, properly so called. The thirsty man who has just drunk off a tumbler of water may say, "By Jove, I wanted that." So may the alcoholic who had just had his nip. The man who passes the sweet peas in the morning walk is more likely to say, "How lovely the smell is." The connoisseur, after his first sip of the famous claret, may similarly say, "This is a great wine." When need pleasures are in question, we tend to make statements about ourselves in the past tense. When appreciative pleasures are in question, we tend to make statements about the object in the present tense. It is easy to see why. Shakespeare has described the satisfaction of tyrannous lust as something past reason hunted and no sooner had. Past reason hated. But the most innocent and necessary of the need pleasures have about them something of the same character. Only something, of course. They are not hated once we have had them, but they certainly die on us, with extraordinary abruptness and completely. The scullery tap and the tumbler are very attractive indeed when we come in parched from mowing the grass. 6 seconds later, they are emptied of all interest. The smell of frying food is very different before and after breakfast. And, if you will forgive me for citing the most extreme instance of all, have there not been moments most of us have seen when the sight of the word gentleman over a door has roused a joy almost worthy of celebration in verse? Pleasures of appreciation are different. They make us feel something that has not merely gratified our senses, in fact, but claimed our appreciation by right. The connoisseur does not merely enjoy his claret as he might enjoy warming his feet when they are cold. He feels here is a wine that deserves his full attention, that justifies all the tradition and skill that have gone to its making, and all the years of training that have made his own palate fit to judge it. There is even a glimmering of unselflessness in his attitude. He wants the wine to be preserved and kept in good condition, not only for his own sake. Even if he were on his deathbed, he was never going to drink his wine again. He would be horrified at the thought of this vintage being spilled or spoiled or even drunk by clods, like myself, who can't tell a good claret from a bad one. And so, with the man who passes the sweet peas, he does not simply enjoy. He feels this fragrance somehow deserves to be enjoyed. He would blame himself if he went past inattentively and undelighted. It would be blockish, insensitive. It would be a shame that so fine a thing should have been wasted on him. He will remember the delicious moment years hence. He will be sorry when he hears that the garden past, which his walk led him that day, has now been swallowed up by cinemas, garages, and the new bypass. Scientifically, Both sorts of pleasure are, no doubt, relative to our organisms, but the need pleasures loudly proclaim their relativity, not only to the human frame, but to its momentary condition, and outside that relation have no meaning or interest for us at all. The objects which afford pleasures of appreciation give us the feeling, whether irrational or not, that we somehow owe it to them to savor, to attend to, and praise it. It would be a sin to set a wine like that before Louis, says an expert in claret. How can you walk past his garden taking no notice of the smell, we ask. But we should never feel this about a need pleasure, never blame ourselves or others for not having been thirsty, therefore walking past a well without taking a drink of water. How the need pleasures foreshadow our need loves is obvious, though. In the latter, the beloved is seen in a relation to our own needs, just as the scullery tap is seen by a thirsty man or a glass of gin by an alcoholic. And the need love, like the need pleasure, will not last longer than needed. This does not, fortunately, mean that all affections which begin in need love are transitionary. The need itself may be permanent or recurrent. Another kind of love may be granted on the need love, moral principles, may preserve the relationship for a long time, but where need love is left unaided, we can hardly expect it not to die on us. Once the need is no more, that is why the world rings with the complaints of mothers whose grown-up children neglect them, and forsaken mistresses whose lovers' love was pure need, which they have satisfied. Our need love for God is in a different position because our need of Him can never end, either in this world or in another. But our awareness of it can, and then the need love dies too. The devil was sick. The devil a monk would be. There seems no reason for describing a hypocritical There's no reason for describing as hypocritical the short-lived piety of those whose religion fades away once they have emerged from danger, necessity, or tribulation. Why should they not have been sincere? They were desperate and they howled for help. Who wouldn't? What appreciative pleasure foreshadows is not so quickly described. First of all, it is the starting point of our whole new experience of beauty. It is impossible to draw a line below which such pleasures are sensual, and above which they are aesthetic. The experiences of the expert in claret already contain elements of concentration, judgment, and disciplined perspectiveness, which are not sensual. Those of the musician still contain elements which are. There is no frontier, there is seamless continuity between the senses' pleasure of garden smells and the enjoyment of the countryside, or beauty as a whole, or even our enjoyment of the painters and poets who treat it. And, as we have seen, there is in these pleasures from the very beginning a shadow or dawn of, or an invitation to, disinterestedness. Of course, in one way, we can be disinterested or unselfish, and far more heroically so, about the need pleasures. It is a cup of water that the wounded Sidney sacrifices to the dying soldier. But that is not the sort of disinterestedness I now mean. Sidney loves his neighbor, but in the appreciative pleasures, even at their lowest, and more as they grow up into the full appreciation of all beauty, we get something that we can hardly help calling love, and hardly help calling disinterested, towards the object itself. It is a feeling which would make a man unwilling to deface a great picture, even if he were the last man left alive, and himself about to die, which makes us glad of unspoiled forest that shall never see, which makes us anxious that the garden or bean field should continue to exist. We do not merely like the things, we pronounce them in a momentarily godlike sense. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very nice. And now our principle of starting at the lowest, without which the highest does not stand, begins to pay a dividend. It has revealed to me a deficiency in our previous classifications of loves into those of need and those of a gift. There is a third element in love, no less important than these, which is foreshadowed by our appreciative values. This judgment that the object is very good, this attention, almost homage, offered to its kind of debt, this wish that it should be and should continue being what it is, even if we were never to enjoy it, can go out not only to the things but to persons. When it is offered to a woman, we call it admiration. When to a man, it's a hero worship. When to God, we just worship, simply. Need love cries to God from our poverty. Gift love longs to serve or even suffer for God. Appreciative love says, we give thanks to thee, the great glory. And need love says of a woman, I cannot live without her. Gift love longs to give her happiness, comfort, protection, if possible, wealth. Appreciative love gazes and holds its breath and is silent, rejoices that such a wonder should even exist, even if not for him, will not be wholly dejected by losing her, would rather have it so than never to have seen her at all. We murder to dissect. In actual life, thank God, the three elements of the love mix and succeed on another, moment by moment. Perhaps none of them except need love ever exists in the chemical purity for more than a few seconds, and perhaps it is because nothing about us except our neededness in this life is permanent. Two forms of love for what is not personal demand special treatment. For some people, perhaps especially for Englishmen and Russians, what we call the love of nature is permanent and serious sentiment. I mean here, the love of nature which cannot be adequately classified simply as an instance of our love for beauty. Of course, many natural objects, trees, flowers, and animals are beautiful. But the nature lovers whom I have in mind are not very much concerned with individual beautiful objects of that sort. The man who distracts them. An enthusiastic botanist is for them a dreadful companion on a ramble. He is stopping to draw their attention to particulars, nor are they looking for views or landscapes. Wordsworth, their spokesman, strongly deprecates this. It leads to a comparison of scene with scene, makes you pamper yourself with meager novelties of color and proportion. While you are busying yourself with this critical and discriminating activity, you lose what really matters: the moods of time and season, the spirit of the place. And of course, Wordsworth is right. That is why, if you love nature in his fashion, a landscape painter is out of doors, an even worse companion than a botanist. It is the moods or the spirit that matter. Nature lovers want to receive as fully as possible whatever nature at each particular time and place is, so to speak, saying. The obvious richness, grace, and harmony of some scenes are no more precious to them than the grimness and bleakness, terror, monotony, or visionary dreariness of others. The featureless itself gets from them a willing response. It is one more word uttered by nature. They lay themselves bare to sheer quality of every countryside, every hour of the day. They want to absorb it into themselves, to be colored through and through by it. This experience, like so many others, after being lauded to the skies in the 19th century, has been debunked by the moderns. And one must certainly concede to the debunkers that Worth's worth, not when he was communicating as a poet, but when he was merely talking about it as a philosopher, said some very silly things. It is silly unless you have found any evidence to believe that the flowers enjoy the air that they breathe. Sillier not to add that if this were true, flowers would be undoubtedly have pains as well as pleasures. Nor have many people have been taught moral philosophy by an impulse from a vernal wood. If they were, it would not necessarily be the sort of moral philosophy Wordsworth would have approved. It might be that of ruthless competition. For some moderns, I think it is. They love nature in so far as, for them, she calls to the dark gods in the blood, not although, but because sex and hunger and sheer power there operate without pity or shame. If you were to take nature as a teacher, she will teach you exactly the lessons you had already decided to learn. This is only another way of saying that nature does not teach. The tendency to take her as a teacher obviously very easily grafted onto the experience we call love of nature, but it is not a graft. While we are actually subjected to them, the moods and spirits of nature's points no morals. Overwhelmingly, gaiety, unsupportable grandeur, sombre desolation are flung at you. Make what you can of them, if you must make at all. The only imperative that nature utters is, look, listen, and attend. So, we are going strong. Man, we still have about 10 more pages. I think that is also a good time to stop. Just real quick, I guess, kind of reflecting on what we read. There are different kinds of loves. He is finally bringing up different kinds of appreciation, loves. It was more in the first couple pages. I'm glad that he's making more distinctions to it, and he's tying things back to his last chapter. It's not just all about God. I love his analogy with the water and the green bean field, and it's true. Like, you won't appreciate water if you're not thirsty. If I don't really like to drink, so I don't really like the alcoholic kind of analogy where it's like, man, people will find their own loves and appreciatives in different ways. I think it's funny with the wine drinker. I'm sure that even on his deathbed, he wouldn't want it to be spilled. He didn't want it to be spoiled, nor does he want it for anyone to drink it without appreciating its taste. So that's something that stuck out to me in that chapter, and I hope something stuck out with you too. Thank you so much for letting me read to you, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.